city, yes.
Okay. So if we look at JPOMA itself, how does it regulate its members? Are there certain requirements that its members must fulfill?
Yes, we have a very strict code of conduct. Our landlords and developers have to comply with all the laws of the city and follow all the policies and bylaws. We also have a very strict code of conduct on how they treat their tenants, their public spaces, and look after them and maintain their properties. We do not allow slumlords or landlords who do not look after their properties to become JPOMA members.
And if they do contravene these codes of conduct?
I cancel the membership.
Okay, thank you. Now, I see you started a list of problem buildings within the inner city in 2017. Why did you start this list?
We found over the years that any building that is next to a bad building or problem property, it either puts the tenants at risk through the increase in crime and grime, or it devalues the property due to the lack of maintenance in the building next door. We'll find that if the electricity is being stolen or the water pipes are being broken, it negatively affects the legitimate landlords.
Okay. I see you've also annexed that list to your statement as AR1.
Yes.
It's the inner city problematic buildings and sites. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And currently you say there are 68 problem buildings in your list.
Those are the ones that I've been made aware of that directly impact our JPOMA members.
And I see Usindiso was also on the list.
That is correct.
Could you explain why that got onto your list?
Sorry?
Could you explain why Usindiso got onto your list?
So the main reason why it was put on the list was before it was a clinic, and a lot of our tenants in that area used it as a clinic. Mm-hmm. And when it was hijacked and the building was taken over, first of all, we lost the clinic in the area, and second of all, the hijackers were damaging the infrastructure around that space, and it became very dangerous for our tenants to walk past the building and through that area. We also had a lot of children who were going to City Kids pre and primary school that also used the clinic, and the clinic had a relationship with City Kids, and also the kids had to walk past the building in order to get to school, and we found that it was becoming unsafe.
And did you alert the city regarding Usindiso?
Yes, we did. In March 2020, just before lockdown started, we had started a program in order to not just support our tenants during lockdown, but to also support people in hijacked buildings, because we knew a lot of the hijacked buildings didn't have water or had illegal water. And we were looking ways to not only to protect our tenants, but also the illegal tenants in the building.
Okay. And those correspondence I see you've annexed as AR2. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, what brought you to this commission was your interview that you had done with Jeremy Maggs on the 2nd of September 2024.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that interview, please?
I was contacted by Jeremy Maggs in order to discuss the problems of hijacked buildings, because over the years I've been very vocal about hijacked buildings in the inner city and the way that they affect not only legitimate residents, but also the conditions that people are living in hijacked buildings.
Thank you. And you were concentrating this evidence on Region F, the inner city, am I correct?
That is correct.
You list 3 types of building hijackings.
Yes.
What are those?
So the 3 types of building hijackings is, first of all, where you see a syndicate going into a building. They either can see that the building is not well managed or maintained by the owners, or in some cases the city of Johannesburg, and they see an opportunity to collect rent, so they will go in by force and take over the building. The second type is where you have disgruntled tenants, where again the building is not maintained properly, and the tenants will take over the building in order to get control, do the maintenance. They very rarely do the maintenance themselves. They'll keep it as a basic, but it is more out of a necessity due to a landlord that is absent. Then the third type is an empty building that's been neglected, and people will see it as an opportunity to move in tenants and collect rentals.
Okay. I see you mentioned that there was recently a violent form of hijacking with regards to one of your members. Could you explain that to us?
We had an incident a couple of weeks ago where a property owner is in the process of selling his building. So it's mid-transfer, so the building is currently empty. They went to go and check up on the building, and they found a rogue security company had been moved into the building. They then contacted myself to see what they could do about it, and I recommended that we move our own security into the building. Our private security went into the building. They kicked out the rogue security, and within a couple of hours, the hijackers had come back in 4 vehicles with AK-47s and shotguns and attempted to hijack the building violently and physically. Luckily, our security company were armed, and they contacted JP Police Station, who was on the scene very quickly and arrested several of the hijackers. And the rest did flee. The building was then put under 24-hour armed protection for the rest of the weekend.
Okay. And this, you say, happened on the 2nd of October 2024?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, you also deal with one of the buildings called Remington Heights.
Correct.
Tell us about Remington Heights.
So Remington Heights is one of the longest hijacked buildings in the inner city. When I started in the inner city 20 years ago, it was already hijacked. It has had several hijackers take control over it over the last 20 years. November last year, we got a court order stating that it took a couple of years of legal footwork and eviction orders and different kind of legal intervention in order to get the final eviction order. Okay. The building was evicted and emptied in November last year, and it will be going what we call live now this November as high-end student accommodation. So in the space of a year, the building has been turned around to a livable condition.
And this is done through one of your members?
It is done through one of our members, yes.
Okay. So let's talk about Remington Heights. The unit size, what kind of accommodation does it have? You said it's student accommodation. Is it all the same unit sizes, same prices?
Because it's student accommodation, it will obviously be regulated by the universities and the various organizations. The unit sizes, I think they vary from 19 square meters to 28 square meters with 2 students in each unit with their own kitchen and bathroom.
Okay. Do you know the price range that these units will cost to rent?
I don't know offhand, but I imagine because of the market that we're in, they could be anything from 3.5 upwards.
Okay. I see you've also attached a video footage of Remington Heights as AR4.
That's correct. Yeah, the photos that are in AR4 are the day after the eviction took place. I went in and took photos of the condition of the building, and you can see in some of the photos that there had been fires in the building already.
Previously. I see there's a lot of waste, and the building is quite dilapidated. Is that correct?
Everything of value was removed from the building. So all the staircase railings, the lifts, all window frames, whatever has value had been removed from the building.
So it was basically an empty shell.
Correct.
Thank you so much. Then let's talk about the impact of problem buildings. You said earlier in your evidence that some of your members next door, its neighbors have problem buildings. How does this impact it? And can you give us an example of that?
The best example is Casimir Building, which is a city-owned building in Berea. That building was started off as temporary emergency accommodation for the city and has subsequently been hijacked. Mm-hmm. The next door neighbor to that is Josie Housing, which is a residential affordable housing building. And they lose a significant amount of money having this hijacked building next door to them because, firstly, they're not able to rent the entire side of the building that is flush to the hijacked building. So there's loss of rentals. They're constantly having to replace the windows on that side of the building due to gunshots and beer bottles being thrown through the window. before they emptied that side of the building of their tenants, they had a lot of injuries as well with, kids sitting at home and, bottles being thrown through the window. So they made the decision to empty that side. So they've got loss of revenue. There's because they can't rent out that side of the building, they've got the way that the city's tariff structure is designed is that every residential unit has to pay a fixed rate per unit for sewer. So every single one of those flats, they're losing on sewer collection.
So you're talking about the flats that are vacant?
The flats.
Still
so
has to pay sewer?
Yes. Even if a flat is vacant, you still have to pay your sewer tariff, and you also have to pay your refuse tariff. Then there's the windows repairs, pest control, because obviously the building is not well managed and you have lots of rodents and roaches. So the Josie Housing has to protect their building against all kinds of pest control. They need additional security to protect their building and their tenants, because when tenants walk past the building, there's a high risk of being mugged. We have had incidences where security officers who have chased criminals into the building have been shot when accessing the building. So it's important to note that not all people who live in hijacked buildings are criminals. Some people are just desperate and they have nowhere else to stay. But criminals do take advantage of the spaces because there are no rules and regulations.
Okay. And I see you've provided us a list with the costs that Tadahop Gardens is affected by the problem building next to it, being Casimir. If you go to paragraph 18, you say their total loss is approximately 196,000 a month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Equating to 2.3 million rand. So this is a loss that your member suffers because of the problem building next to it.
Exactly, and that's just one hijacked building.
Okay. Let's talk to possible solutions. In your experience, what is the biggest problem around problem buildings? Why does it occur?
So I think the first biggest problem that we have is we obviously have the PI Act, which prevents eviction without alternative accommodation, and a lot of the hijackers know this, and they use our own policies against us. And that we've seen that escalate over the years. There's various different policies that they are using, specifically the PI Act. The second, I would say, is the increase in bribery between building hijackers and government officials. In my opinion, you couldn't have a building hijacked for 20 years unless someone was getting a payout somewhere. We've seen a lot of incidences where legitimate city power people have gone on site to go and disconnect their illegal connections of electricity, and their lives are threatened. So it's a very high, building hijackings are high risk. Building hijackers will do anything to protect their income, and they will use intimidation tactics to do that. I think that it's a very complex problem that needs every single government department involved, from Home Affairs, City Power, Joburg Water, development planning, human settlements. Everybody needs to be in the room together, and in my experience, it's very difficult to do that.
What about bylaw contraventions?
Yes. So, yeah, there's a lot of there are a lot of bylaws in place that could assist in getting rid of hijackers and getting control of the buildings, but there's very little bylaw enforcement. It seems that the bylaws that are enforced are the easier ones to enforce. And one of in any hijacked building, you're going to have things like overcrowding, illegal dumping, occupational health and safety risks, and none of these are enforced by anyone.
Okay. JPOMA also assists body holding space.
So actually, in this last week, I've had 2 body corporates contact me who are both in the process of being hijacked.
Okay.
And what happens with body corporates is you'll have, say, in a building of 30 units, 25 are legitimate owners who are trying to protect their assets, and you'll have 5 units where they've either been hijacked by the original owner, or the original owner has rented them out and lost control of the property. And then they will go around and try and take over the property by undermining the legitimate owners and kicking out the security, bringing their own security in. And what we try and, I actually have a meeting with GFIS tomorrow to present one of the body corporates to GFIS to try and get some kind of intervention. The problem with body corporates is you're not dealing with one owner. You're dealing with you're dealing with 2 or several owners. So when SAPS comes out and wants to take comments and try and assist, it's difficult for them to always pinpoint who is legitimate and who is not.
And do you think that the body corporates understand building management? Do you find that they know what is required of them?
No, definitely not. So there's a lack of education when it comes to body corporates. In some cases, units are transferred to people and they haven't been educated that they've got to pay levies, they've still got to pay Joburg Water, they still have to pay city power. So you end up in a situation where the body corporate could own anything from R1 million to R2 million in utilities, but they were unaware that they still had to pay those bills and maintain their own building.
Okay. Let's go to social housing tariffs. What do you find is the problem around social housing tariffs, and how can that be a solution?
So currently in the city of Johannesburg, we don't have any social housing tariffs at all. So whether you stay in the inner city or Sandton or Rosebank or anywhere, your tariffs are exactly the same. There's very little rebates for social affordable housing. And what this does is tenants pick up pretty quickly that they are able to move into areas where they don't have to pay for utilities and only have to worry about rent. So when you look at the social housing model, if your social housing rental is capped at 1,000 or even 1,200 Rand, your utilities for the same unit will cost about 1,500. So in most cases, your utilities will cost more than your rental.
Okay. And do you find that that assists in these buildings being hijacked?
Absolutely. People will move into hijacked buildings because of their financial situation. And it's easier to pay 1,000, 1,500 Rand as a flat rental and not have to worry about paying water and electricity rates, sewer, refuse. And they're basically robbing the system twice because the landlord ultimately has to pay, or they don't pay because the building's been hijacked and the city is losing on they're losing water and electricity, but they're also losing out on the payment of those services.
Thank you so much. Let's move to the next topic, which is temporary emergency accommodation. Now, I know you said with Remington Heights, ultimately through lots of legal maneuvering, you managed to get those tenants to move into temporary emergency accommodation. What is your thoughts around temporary emergency accommodation?
So personally, I'm not a supporter of temporary emergency accommodation. I don't think that I think it's an injustice to move people from one home to what they would be ultimately their temporary home. We should be moving people from dismal, unlivable situations into their forever now home until they are able to uplift themselves and move into better accommodation. I don't believe in free accommodation because every single building, hijacked building, you're paying rent. Anybody who says that they're not paying rent in a hijacked building is being deceptive. So I think that there should be a situation where people are moved from hijacked buildings into apartments that fit their budget and that they are able to stay there as long as they pay. I think temporary accommodation is actually, I think it's more disruptive than helpful.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to paragraph 25 of your statement. You deal with Thabiso Masela's presentation to the Inner City Partnership Forum. What was that about and why did he make this presentation? So
I included this presentation into my affidavit to highlight the fact that This situation has been going on for years. The city has known about it for years. This is one of several presentations that I've seen over the years, and it seems as if we're always talking about the same thing. You can look at any presentation from even before this, from 2000 until now, and they're almost exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So this was really more to highlight the fact that nothing has changed, everybody's talking, and no one has actually done anything, especially even from 2017.
Mm-hmm. What would JPOMO's view be regarding public-private partnerships in developing the inner city?
So the reality is JPOMO and its members have been building affordable housing for 20 years, or longer, 25 years. We have the knowledge, we have the experience, we know how to do it affordably and quick. The city doesn't have that expertise or experience, and every meeting we've put our heart on the table and said, we're here to help you, let us work together. We will offer up the experience, we will offer up all of our knowledge, just work with us. Either by giving us a building or giving us the money to do the building, but the reality is the city of Johannesburg is not capable of building housing quickly and efficiently.
Okay. Let us just turn to our terms of reference and what we are required to do. And can I just get your opinion on this? From your experience, who do you think should shoulder this liability of problem buildings within the inner city?
So I think, first of all, I think that the problem of hijacked buildings and bad buildings is the responsibility of every single department in the city. Mm-hmm. SAPS should be there from the criminal perspective. JMPD should be there from bylaw. City Power should be there disconnecting. Joburg Water should be there disconnecting or putting in meters. Billing department should be when we highlight that a building has been hijacked, they're supposed to do level 3 disconnections and stop the billing. They don't do that. Home Affairs should be there sorting out illegal occupants from illegal immigrants. The Department of Housing should be there ensuring that there is alternative accommodation. Building planning and occupational health and safety should be in doing building inspections to make sure that the building is safe for habitation. So in my opinion, everybody is at fault. And I think that the only way to fix it is for everybody to get together.
Thank you. What would you say would be the lessons learned from your experience working in the inner city with these problem buildings?
The most important thing is the minute that there's even an inkling or a suggestion that a building is about to get hijacked is to get on top of it as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. The further down that the building is hijacked, the harder it is to get control of the building. And I think that if we could get the support of council, the minute that we know that there's a problem, we could stop further hijackings. Mm. With regard to the buildings that are currently hijacked, from our experience, the majority of them do belong to the city, because unfortunately the city, whether it's through Joshco or Johannesburg Property Company or Human Settlements, the buildings are not managed correctly. They need to get proper building management into the buildings. The building managers need to go on courses. In some cases, they don't even have building managers on site, and their own tenants have hijacked their own buildings. So there needs to be a real crackdown on education, action, and efficiency.
Thank you. I know we've covered some possible solutions, but are there any other recommendations that you think could be made to this commission to assist us in addressing this issue?
So if I look at the past and what I've seen and experienced in the last 20 years, I think the ideal solution would be, we know that the city of Johannesburg, either through the provincial or municipal, own quite a few buildings in the inner city. I would suggest giving those buildings to the private developers, maybe with support, financial support, saying that they will pay half or 80% of the development costs, and let us develop develop the properties, turn them into affordable housing, and then manage them for a period of time, and then at some point either hand them back to the city, well managed and well looked after, or just allow the private sector to keep managing and developing the properties on behalf of the city.
The cost and the delays and the amounts,
Can I just take you back, thank you for that, to Remington Heights? One of the witnesses that's going to be presented to the Commission is Solomon.
Yes.
He is the managing director that took over the building of Remington Heights. Could you tell us if you know anything about that? I know he's a JPOMO member as well, in relation to the cost of building those units and what difficulties and problems they've experienced.
Solly Ramalamula from Take Shape Properties has been in charge of he's been involved very substantially from even before the legal aspect of the building. He assisted with the evictions. When it comes to the cost breakdown, I don't have those figures, so I'm not sure he's the best person to speak to.
Not a problem.
But Solly has been very instrumental in turning around quite a few hijacked buildings in the inner city, Remington House, Cape York. He has a very humane way of dealing with the tenants and ensuring that the building is emptied correctly, and that the building, he's there from beginning to end. So all through construction, he's making sure that everyone is doing their jobs and everything is up to standard.
Okay. Thank you so much. Madam Chair, Madam Commissioner, this is the evidence of Ms. Rivers.
Thank you, Ms. Platt. Mr. Miandu, are there any questions of clarification that you seek from the witness?
I think it's 8 or 9.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Commissioner. Madam Chair, we do have some questions of clarification.
Yes.
Ms. Rivers, good morning to you.
Morning.
I'd just like to clarify in relation to the question of who should shoulder responsibility. In the work that J. Palmer does, has there been an observation that privately owned buildings are also abandoned to the extent that they are then hijacked?
So, in my experience, the buildings they're not hijacked and then they're not abandoned and then hijacked. They're usually abandoned because they've been hijacked. So we have, for example, the building that's in JP Street where there was a fire a couple of months ago. That building was hijacked, and the owners of that building had gone through the courts to declare the building hijacked, tried to get a level 3 disconnection, and there was zero support from any of the city's different departments. So we couldn't get a level 3 disconnection. We couldn't get city power out there. We couldn't get SAPs out there. So eventually the owner, out of frustration, will walk away from the building. In some cases, we have seen where a JPOMA member has bought a building which wasn't hijacked, and during the transfer process, the building was hijacked. And then 20 years later, we were only able to get the hijackers out of the building. So it's very rare to see a case where an owner has deliberately left their building and then it got hijacked. It's usually the other way around.
All right. I guess the only clarification that arises from what you are saying then, it is possible that a building is hijacked not only because it's been left unattended to, but even buildings that are managed are also hijacked.
Correct.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Rivers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Miandu. Ms. Madumise, do you have any questions of clarification to put to the witness? No questions. On behalf of SERI, any questions of clarification? Thank you. Ms. Rivers, we thank you for having availed yourself to give evidence before the Commission to facilitate its work.
Thank you.
You are excused as a witness.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Semenya?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, in the ordinary course of formal hearings, previous consistent statements of witnesses are inadmissible.
Yes.
But this being an investigative process, and just for completeness of the record, we would, with your permission and no objection, ask that the statement of Ms. Rivers be admitted into evidence as Exhibit AR1A to 9, AR1 capital A to 9.
The exhibit of Ms. Angela Rivers is admitted into the record as Exhibit AR1 capital A to 9.
I'm indebted to you, Chair. That takes care of the formal hearings for today, Chair.
Yes. The auditorium is not available tomorrow and Friday,
So we are advised.
so we've got to adjourn these proceedings to Monday.
The date I'm advised is 28 October, Chair.
Yes, these proceedings are adjourned to the 28th of October, 2024. We are adjourned.